Admiral Zekthar stared at the holographic display with his four eyes blinking in sequence, a sign of deep distress among his species. The battle reports from the Zalan sector showed another devastating loss for the Concordat forces. 3 more planets had fallen to the Draxian Empire in the past month alone. "How much longer can we sustain these losses?" he asked, his voice a low rumble that filled the command chamber. His second-in-command, Sub-Commander Vrlix, stepped forward. "Our analysts predict collapse of our outer defenses within 6 cycles if the current pattern continues." Zekthar's skin shifted to a pale blue, indicating his anxiety. The Galactic Concordat had been fighting the Draxians for nearly 30 years by galactic standard. What had begun as a border dispute had escalated into the most destructive conflict the known universe had witnessed in 12 millennia. "There might be an option we haven't considered," Vrlix said carefully. "Speak freely." "The humans." Zekthar turned all 4 eyes toward his subordinate. "The Earth species. They barely control their own solar system. Their fastest ships can't even achieve proper warp speed." "Yes, but our intelligence reports indicate something unusual about their military development. While primitive in most aspects, their battleship design and weapons systems are remarkable." Vrlix activated a new hologram showing a bulky, inelegant vessel that looked nothing like the sleek ships of the Concordat or the crystalline structures favored by the Draxians. "This is their newest class of battleship. They call it a dreadnought. Our simulations suggest that a single one of these vessels could destroy 3 of our cruisers before being disabled." Zekthar blinked rapidly. "Impossible. We've confirmed the data multiple times. They've developed some form of quantum-based weaponry that our shields would struggle to repel, and the Draxians would fare no better." The Admiral sank into his gravity chair. "If the Draxians learn of this, they likely already suspect. We must act quickly." Commander John Miller enjoyed the feeling of real gravity beneath his feet. After 6 months on the International Moonbase, Earth's pull felt heavy but comforting. He walked through the United Earth Defense Force headquarters in Geneva, returning salutes from junior officers. "Commander Miller," a voice called from behind him. "A moment, please." Miller turned to see Admiral Gwen Harris approaching. She was not alone. Beside her walked a tall, blue-skinned humanoid with 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. "Commander, this is Diplomat Vexna of the Galactic Concordat," Harris said. "The diplomat has requested a private meeting with you specifically." Miller kept his face neutral despite his surprise. Contact with the Concordat was still relatively new for humanity, barely 5 years since first contact. Private meetings were unusual. "Of course, Admiral. My office is this way." Once inside his modest office, Miller offered the alien a seat designed for non-human anatomies, a recent addition to Earth facilities. "Commander Miller," Vexna began in slightly accented English, "I come with a message of utmost importance from Admiral Zekthar himself." Miller waited, curious. "We are aware of your new battleship program," the alien continued. "The vessels you call dreadnoughts. That information is classified," Miller said carefully. Vexna's skin rippled slightly. "The galaxy has many eyes, Commander, but that is not why I am here. I bring a warning. No, a plea." The alien leaned forward. "For the sake of everything sacred, keep your battleships out of this war." Miller frowned. "What war? Earth is not engaged in any interstellar conflict. The war between the Concordat and the Draxian Empire, a conflict that has raged for nearly 3 decades. We know of your ongoing hostilities, but Earth has maintained strict neutrality." Vexna's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "For now. But there are forces that would draw you in. Your ships, they possess destructive capabilities beyond what you may realize. Their involvement would—" The alien paused, searching for words. "It would escalate matters beyond containment." Miller studied the diplomat. "Are you threatening Earth?" "No," Vexna said quickly. "I am trying to save it, and perhaps the rest of the galaxy too. Some technologies are too dangerous to deploy, even against enemies. We learned this lesson at terrible cost. As Miller pondered this cryptic warning, his communication device chimed with an urgent message. He glanced at it and felt his blood run cold. "Commander, there's been an attack near Neptune. The cargo vessel Northern Star is under fire from unknown ships." Miller looked up at Vexna, whose blue skin had turned almost white. "It has begun," the alien whispered. 3 months after the warning from Vexna, the attack on the Northern Star remained a painful mystery. Captain Laura Winters sat in a wheelchair in the hospital wing of the Luna colony, staring out at the gray landscape. Of the Northern Star's crew of 42, only 7 had survived. She turned as the door slid open. Lieutenant Greg Howard entered, carrying a tablet. His young face looked older now, weighed down by the investigation he had been leading. "Captain Winters," he said with a respectful nod. "How are you feeling today?" "Like someone who watched their ship and friends get blown apart," she said flatly. "Please tell me you have something." Howard pulled up a chair. "Maybe. I've been analyzing the sensor readings from the Neptune defense grid. The attacking ships don't match Concordat designs." "Draxians, then?" Howard shook his head. "Not them either. The energy signatures are completely different from anything in our database." Laura's eyes narrowed. "A third party?" "It looks that way." Howard showed her the tablet with images of unusual ship configurations. "These don't match any known designs. And there's something else." He swiped to a new screen showing energy readings. The weapons used against the Northern Star were designed to look like Concordat technology, but there are subtle differences. "Someone wants us to think the Concordat attacked us," Laura said slowly. "Exactly. And guess who's been pushing that narrative the hardest?" "The Draxians," Laura answered, remembering the aggressive statements from the Draxian ambassador following the attack. Howard nodded. "But I'm not sure they're behind it either. This feels like someone else is playing both sides." The door opened again, and Colonel Patricia Davis walked in. Her stern face showed no emotion as she surveyed the room. "Lieutenant Howard, I thought I'd find you here," she said. "The Earth Defense Council wants answers, not theories." Howard stood up straight. "Colonel, I believe I have evidence that neither the Concordat nor the Draxians were responsible for the Northern Star attack." Davis raised an eyebrow. "That's a bold claim. The weapon signatures have been modified to resemble Concordat technology, but the underlying resonance patterns don't match." Davis looked at the data on Howard's tablet for a long moment. "This is concerning, but not conclusive. Who would benefit from dragging Earth into this conflict?" "I don't know yet," Howard admitted, "but I need more resources to continue the investigation." Davis frowned. "Resources are tight right now. The Council is diverting everything to the battleship program after the attack." "Which might be exactly what someone wants," Captain Winters interjected. Davis considered this, then nodded slightly. "You have 2 weeks, Lieutenant. Keep this quiet and report directly to me." After Davis left, Howard turned back to Laura. "There's one more thing I didn't mention to the Colonel yet." He pulled up another file on his tablet. The Northern Star's black box recorded a brief communication burst just before the attack. It was heavily encrypted, but I managed to extract one phrase. He played the audio. A distorted voice spoke. "The fire rises when the sleeping giants awaken." Laura shivered. "What does that mean?" "I'm not sure, but I found references to sleeping giants in some intercepted communications between unknown parties. I think they're talking about Earth's battleships." Outside the hospital window, a transport ship lifted off, heading toward Earth. On board was Ambassador Keyvorn of the Draxian Empire, preparing for his first official visit to the human homeworld. In his private quarters, he reviewed the information about Earth's military capabilities, paying special attention to the sections about their new battleships. "Such primitive designs," he muttered to himself. And yet, he studied the theoretical weapons output with growing interest. These humans had stumbled upon something potentially devastating, something that could tip the balance of a war that had raged for decades. Kivorn smiled as he practiced his speech for the Earth Defense Council. The humans would be easy to manipulate after the attack on their ship. They would be eager for allies and technology. They would not realize they were being pulled into something far beyond their understanding. As the transport approached the blue planet, Kivorn sent a secure message. The invitation will be delivered. The giants will soon serve our purpose. The United Earth Council chamber fell silent as Ambassador Kivorn finished his presentation. The tall, crystalline-skinned Draxian stood proudly before the human leaders, his voice still echoing in the vast room. In summary, he said, an alliance between Earth and the Draxian Empire would benefit us both. We offer you faster-than-light technology that would cut your travel time between stars by half. We offer you defense systems tested in decades of war. And most importantly, we offer you a place among the great powers of the galaxy. Council President Maria Alvarez leaned forward. And in return, you want our battleship technology. Kivorn's expression remained carefully neutral. We prefer to call it a mutual defense agreement. Your ships would join our fleets in maintaining security against Concordat aggression. The Concordat claims they did not attack the Northern Star, said Defense Secretary Oliver Brown. Of course they would deny it, Kivorn replied smoothly, just as they denied the destruction of our colony on Vega Prime, where 10,000 civilians died. In the back of the chamber, Lieutenant Gray Howard watched with growing concern. He had been invited as an observer due to his work on the Northern Star investigation. Something about Kivorn's story didn't match the evidence he had gathered. Later that day, in a secure lab beneath Denver, engineer Stephanie Garcia carefully adjusted the quantum alignment on her newest design. The weapon prototype hummed with energy, its blue glow reflecting off her protective visor. Power levels stable at 97%, she reported to the small team watching from behind safety barriers. That's a 12% improvement over last week's test. Dr. Russell, the project director, nodded with approval. If these results hold, we could begin retrofitting the battleships within 2 months. Stephanie removed her visor and wiped sweat from her forehead. I'm still concerned about the containment field. At full power, the quantum cascade could become unpredictable. But it would penetrate any known shield technology, asked a new voice. Stephanie turned to see Secretary Brown entering the lab with Ambassador Kivorn. Sir, she said with surprise, I wasn't told we would have visitors today. A last-minute decision, Brown replied. Ambassador Kivorn has been authorized to receive a general briefing on our defense technologies. Kivorn smiled, his crystalline teeth gleaming under the lab lights. I am particularly interested in your quantum weaponry, Engineer Garcia. My people have researched similar concepts, but never achieved stable results. Stephanie glanced at Dr. Russell, who gave a slight nod. We've developed a method of containing quantum fluctuations within a focused beam, she explained carefully, revealing no classified details. It allows us to bypass traditional energy shields by attacking their fundamental frequencies. Kivorn's eyes widened slightly. Fascinating. And how many of your battleships have been equipped with this technology? Before Stephanie could answer, Dr. Russell stepped in. That information is still classified, Ambassador. Perhaps we could continue the tour in another section. As they left, Stephanie couldn't shake a feeling of unease. Something in Kivorn's questions seemed too precise, too knowledgeable for someone supposedly unfamiliar with quantum weapons. Lieutenant Howard sat alone in his small office, reviewing new data from deep space monitoring stations. The screen showed unusual energy signatures near the edge of the solar system, similar to those detected during the Northern Star attack. His computer chimed with an incoming message. The sender was anonymous, but the encryption pattern matched Concordat technology. Howard hesitated, then opened it. The message contained only an image, ancient-looking symbols arranged in a circle around what appeared to be a black flame. Below it, a single line of text. Beware the Void Heralds. They seek the fire of human ships to burn away all creation. Howard stared at the message, a cold feeling settling in his stomach. He reached for his secure line to contact Colonel Davis. This investigation had just become much more complicated. At that same moment, in orbit around Earth, 3 human battleships conducted maneuvers. Their massive hulls gleamed in the sunlight, visible from the surface as bright moving stars. Unknown to their crews, tiny probe drones watched from a safe distance, transmitting every detail back to hidden receivers. The drones bore no markings, but their design incorporated elements from both Concordat and Draxian technology, merged and modified by hands that served neither empire. Lieutenant Howard hurried through the underground corridors of the Earth Defense Force headquarters. Beside him walked Dr. Alan Richardson, a civilian specialist in alien languages who had been working with the military since first contact with the Concordat. "Are you sure about this translation?" Howard asked, keeping his voice low despite the empty hallway. Richardson nodded, his round glasses sliding down his nose. "Absolutely. The term Void Heralds appears in both Concordat and Draxian historical records, though they use different words for it. It refers to an ancient organization that both species seem reluctant to discuss openly." They reached a secure conference room where Colonel Davis waited with a stern expression. On the large screen behind her was the symbol Howard had received, the black flame encircled by alien script. "I hope this is worth interrupting my meeting with the secretary," Davis said. Howard took a deep breath. "Colonel, we believe we've identified the third party responsible for the Northern Star attack. They're called the Void Heralds." He nodded to Richardson, who stepped forward and pulled up additional images on the screen. The Void Heralds appear to be some kind of cult or secret society that has existed for thousands of years, Richardson explained. They believe in what translates roughly as purifying fire through conflict. They see large-scale war as a cleansing force in the galaxy. Davis frowned. "And you think they attacked our ship to draw us into the war between the Concordat and the Draxians?" "Yes," Howard said, "but there's more. We've intercepted communications suggesting they have agents embedded in both the Concordat and Draxian governments. They're actively working to escalate the conflict. And our battleships are the match they want to throw into the fuel," Davis said slowly, understanding dawning on her face. "Exactly. Their ancient texts mention something called the Final Fire that will purify the galaxy. We think they see our quantum weapons as the means to achieve this." Davis turned away, processing this information. "Do we have any proof beyond ancient myths and intercepted messages?" Before Howard could answer, his secure tablet chimed with an urgent alert. He checked it, and his eyes widened. "Ma'am, Captain Frank Peters of the battleship Defiant is reporting contact with what he believed were Concordat officials requesting his help with a demonstration of force against a Draxian outpost." "The Concordat wouldn't be that reckless," Davis said sharply. "No, they wouldn't," Howard agreed. Captain Peters became suspicious and demanded verification. The supposed officials fled. "We're checking security footage now, but I believe they were Void Herald operatives trying to provoke an incident." On the other side of the solar system, Captain Frank Peters stood on the bridge of the Defiant, Earth's newest and most powerful battleship. At nearly a kilometer long, the vessel housed weapons that could theoretically destroy small moons. "Security sweep complete, sir," reported his first officer. "No sign of the visitors, and no record of authorized transport to or from the ship." Peters nodded grimly. "Increase alert level and inform all crew to report any unusual contacts. I want hourly system checks on weapons control." He stared out at the stars, wondering how close they had come to disaster. The visitors had almost convinced him that firing on the Draxian outpost was necessary to prevent an imminent attack on Earth. Only a small discrepancy in their identification codes had made him suspicious. Meanwhile, in a hidden facility built into the dark side of a distant asteroid, 7 figures in black robes stood around a holographic display showing the Defiant. "The direct approach failed," said one, voice distorted by a mask shaped like a twisted flame. "It matters not," replied another. "The humans grow more suspicious of both great powers. Soon they will see no choice but to use their great weapons. And when they do, The final fire will begin, they all intoned together. The central figure gestured, and the display changed to show engineer Stephanie Garcia working in her lab. There is another way, the figure said. If we cannot make them use the weapons, we will take the weapons ourselves, finished another. All 7 placed their hands over the image of Stephanie, as if in blessing or perhaps in hunger, their masked faces reflecting the cold light of the display in the darkness of their sanctuary. Engineer Stephanie Garcia never saw them coming. One moment she was working late in her lab, the next she was surrounded by figures in black suits that seemed to absorb light. Before she could scream, a sweet-smelling gas filled the air. As darkness claimed her, she saw them gathering her research tablets and prototype designs. The next morning, the Earth Defense Force headquarters buzzed with grim activity. Admiral William Rogers stood before a crisis team, his weathered face tight with anger. 4 of our top weapons researchers are missing, including Engineer Garcia, he announced. Security footage shows unidentified intruders using technology that blocked our sensors. This wasn't a random kidnapping. They knew exactly who to take and how to get to them. Commander John Miller, recently assigned to headquarters after the Concordat warning, spoke up. Sir, Lieutenant Howard's team believes this is the work of the Void Heralds. Rogers nodded. I've reviewed their reports. The timing is too perfect to be coincidence. He turned to the large display showing the solar system. We've detected an unregistered ship leaving Mars orbit 12 hours ago. Its trajectory suggests it's heading for the edge of the system. Can we intercept? Miller asked. That's why I called you here, Commander. The Sentinel is the only ship we have that might catch them before they reach the border zone. Miller straightened. The Sentinel was the sister ship to the Defiant, Earth's newest battleship class. He had been scheduled to take command next week. Sir, the Sentinel hasn't completed its final systems check. The quantum weapons are still being calibrated. Rogers met his eyes. There's no time, Miller. Engineer Garcia knows more about our battleship technology than anyone alive. We cannot let her knowledge fall into Void Herald hands. He handed Miller a data chip. These are your orders. The Sentinel launches in 2 hours. Find that ship and bring our people home. 2 days later, the Sentinel cut through space at its maximum speed. The massive battleship hummed with power as it pursued the kidnapper's vessel. On the bridge, Commander Miller studied the tactical display. Status report, he ordered. Target continuing on course toward the border zone, his sensor officer replied. At current speeds, we'll intercept in 3 hours. Miller nodded. Maintain pursuit. Weapons status. Conventional systems at full capacity. Quantum systems at 68% alignment. Less than ideal, but it would have to do. Miller had strict orders not to use the quantum weapons unless absolutely necessary. The technology was too new, too powerful, and too dangerous. The communications officer turned suddenly. Commander, we're detecting multiple ships ahead. 3 vessels have just dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They appear to be Draxian patrol cruisers. Miller frowned. The border zone was neutral territory between Concordat and Draxian space. What were Draxian ships doing there? They're moving to intercept the target vessel. The sensor officer reported. Open a channel, Miller ordered. This is Commander John Miller of the Earth vessel Sentinel. We are in pursuit of criminals who have kidnapped Earth citizens. Request you allow us to continue our mission. The reply came quickly. Earth vessel, this is Commander Vrek of the Draxian Empire. The ship you pursue has requested our protection. Stand down and leave Draxian patrol space immediately. Miller's first officer whispered, They're working with the Void Heralds. Or they'd been deceived, Miller replied. Tactical. Calculate a course that takes us around the Draxian ships. We'll try to avoid conflict. Before they could act, the Draxian vessels opened fire, not on the Sentinel, but on the ship carrying Garcia. The smaller vessel evaded, then accelerated toward the Sentinel. They're running straight for us, the tactical officer shouted. And the Draxians are pursuing. Miller saw the trap immediately. The Void Heralds were trying to place the Sentinel between themselves and the Draxians, forcing a confrontation. "Evasive maneuvers," he ordered. "We cannot engage the Draxians." But it was too late. The kidnapper ship slipped past the Sentinel with surprising speed, and suddenly the Earth battleship found itself facing 3 Draxian cruisers with weapons charged. "They're firing," the tactical officer yelled. Energy beams struck the Sentinel's shields, which flared bright blue against the darkness of space. "Return fire. Conventional weapons only," Miller commanded, knowing that what happened next might change the fate of 3 civilizations. The Sentinel's weapons batteries roared to life, sending streams of energy toward the Draxian ships. The first shots punctured the lead cruiser's shields as if they weren't there. In seconds, the cruiser erupted into a ball of flame. Everyone on the bridge fell silent as they watched the Draxian ship disintegrate. "Sir," the tactical officer said quietly, "we just destroyed their cruiser with only conventional weapons at minimum power." Miller stared at the screen where the other 2 Draxian ships were now retreating in obvious panic. Now he understood the warning from the Concordat diplomat months ago. The truth was terrifying. Earth's conventional weapons were far more powerful than they had realized. The quantum weapons were beyond devastating, and someone had just ensured that the Draxian Empire knew it too. News of the Sentinel's encounter with the Draxian cruisers spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Visual recordings of the battle leaked to information networks on 100 worlds. Everyone saw how easily the human battleship had destroyed a Draxian cruiser with minimal effort. In the Grand Council chamber of the Concordat capital world, Admiral Zekthar faced an emergency session. "We warned them," a council member shouted. "We told the humans to keep their ships out of this conflict." "The humans claimed they were pursuing kidnappers," Zekthar replied. "Criminals who had taken their weapons designer. And now the Draxians are mobilizing their entire fleet," another council member said. "They demand we hand over any human technology we might possess, or they will consider it an act of war." Zekthar lowered all 4 of his eyes. "We possess no such technology. The Draxians don't believe that. And they now see the humans as an existential threat." On Earth, a similar crisis unfolded. The United Earth Council gathered in their underground chamber as protests raged in cities worldwide. Fear of alien retaliation had sparked panic. "We have received ultimatums from both the Concordat and the Draxian Empire," President Alvarez announced grimly. "Both demand we surrender our battleship technology immediately or face attack." Admiral Rogers stood at the display, showing the positions of alien fleets moving toward the solar system. "The Draxians will reach our outer defenses in 5 days. The Concordat, perhaps a day later." "Can we fight them both?" asked Secretary Brown. Rogers shook his head. "Not simultaneously. Even our battleships have limits." Colonel Davis spoke up from her seat. "We should comply with the demands. Surrender the technology to prevent war." "That technology is our only defense," Rogers countered. "If we give it up, what happens when they decide humans are too dangerous to leave alive?" The council chamber erupted in argument. Outside the room, Lieutenant Howard and Dr. Richardson waited anxiously. "They don't understand what's really happening," Howard said quietly. "The Void Heralds orchestrated all of this." Richardson nodded, clutching a tablet with new translations. "I've found more references in ancient texts. The Void Heralds believe in a prophecy about weapons that unmake reality being wielded by the youngest race to bring about galactic purification. They think our quantum weapons are these prophecy devices," Howard realized. "And they've manipulated events to make both major powers fear us enough to attack." "A classic trap," Richardson agreed. "If Earth surrenders the technology, we're defenseless. If we fight, we might win some battles but eventually lose the war against 2 galactic powers. And if we use the quantum weapons at full power, we might prove the Void Heralds right about unmaking reality." Howard finished. Inside the secure lab where Engineer Garcia had worked, a small team of scientists studied the remains of her research. Among them was Captain Laura Winters, now recovered enough to serve as a consultant due to her experience with alien encounters. Garcia left behind encrypted notes. One scientist said, "We've only decoded fragments, but it appears she had concerns about the quantum weapons." Laura examined the equations on the screen. These suggest instability at high power levels, a cascade effect that could spread beyond the target. "What does that mean in simple terms?" asked a security officer. Laura looked grim. "It means our most powerful weapons might be too dangerous to use at full strength. They could create a reaction that spreads, affecting more than just the target." On the Sentinel, now holding position near Jupiter, Commander Miller received new orders. The battleship was to move to Earth's orbit as the last line of defense. As he studied the reports of approaching alien fleets, his communication officer called out, "Sir, we're receiving a transmission. It's weak, possibly coming from inside Draxian territory." "Put it through," Miller ordered. A familiar voice came through with static. "This is Engineer Garcia. I've escaped but need extraction. I have critical information about the Void Heralds. They're planning something worse than war. They want to trigger a quantum catastrophe using our weapons." Miller's heart raced. "Can you reach our borders?" "No," Garcia replied. "But I've made contact with someone else who wants to stop this war, a Draxian scientist named Kelvin and a Concordat diplomat." "Vexna?" Miller asked. "Yes," Garcia confirmed. "We need to arrange a meeting between all three sides immediately, before it's too late." The small moon orbiting a gas giant at the edge of unclaimed space seemed an unlikely place for a meeting that might determine the fate of three civilizations. Commander Miller had brought the Sentinel here under orders that only Admiral Rogers knew about. The rest of Earth's leadership remained unaware of this desperate gamble. Miller stood in the shuttle bay as the airlock cycled open. Captain Laura Winters entered first, followed by Lieutenant Howard. Behind them came Engineer Garcia, looking thin and tired but very much alive. "Welcome back," Miller said, embracing his old friend. "Good to be back," Garcia replied, "though our visitors might not receive such a warm welcome." She stepped aside, revealing two aliens. One was the blue-skinned, four-eyed Concordat diplomat Vexna. The other was a tall, crystalline figure that Miller recognized as a Draxian. "This is Science Director Kelvin." Garcia introduced the Draxian. "He's been working against the war faction in the Draxian leadership." Miller nodded stiffly. "Welcome aboard the Sentinel. Though I admit I'm surprised a Draxian would set foot on a human battleship after what happened to your cruiser." Kelvin's crystalline features shifted in what might have been a grimace. "That incident proved what some of us have long suspected. The Void Heralds have been manipulating both our empires for decades." The group moved to a secure conference room. On the way, Miller noted how the Draxians studied the ship's design with obvious interest. "What you have created here," Kelvin said, "should not be possible for a species at your technological level. Your quantum theories are centuries ahead of your other technologies." "We got lucky," Garcia explained. "A research accident 5 years ago led us down an unexpected path." Once in the conference room, Vexna spoke up. "Time is short. Both the Concordat and Draxian fleets are moving toward Earth. Once they arrive, neither government will be able to back down without losing face." Howard activated a display showing the positions of the approaching fleets. "We have less than 3 days. Then we must be direct," Kelvin said. "The Void Heralds have agents at the highest levels of both our governments. They have one goal: to see your quantum weapons deployed at full power." "Why?" Miller asked. "What do they gain from Galactic War?" Vexna and Kelvin exchanged glances. It was Garcia who answered. "Because they believe it will create a doorway," she said. "While I was their prisoner, they spoke of the beyond, and those who wait outside. They think a quantum catastrophe will tear the fabric between dimensions." "They're a death cult," Laura added. "They worship entropy and destruction." Miller rubbed his face. "So how do we stop 2 massive fleets from attacking Earth?" We need proof of the Void Herald's manipulation, Vexna said. Something we can transmit to our governments that cannot be denied. Howard leaned forward. I might have something. We've identified communications between Herald agents on both sides. If we can trace them back to their source, I can help with that, Kelvin offered. As science director, I have access to Draxian intelligence networks. And I have Concordat codes that might be useful, Vexna added. Miller made his decision. We work together then. Lieutenant Howard will coordinate the intelligence gathering. Garcia, work with our guests to identify Herald agents in their governments. Captain Winters, prepare a diplomatic package we can broadcast once we have proof. As the others left to begin their tasks, Miller held back Garcia. About the quantum weapons, he said quietly, what happens if we have to use them at full power? Garcia's face grew solemn. Based on my calculations while captive, the Heralds might be right about one thing. At maximum output, our weapons could create a cascade effect that would tear a hole in space-time, not a doorway to another dimension, but something much worse, a wound in reality that might never heal. Miller felt cold dread settle in his stomach. Then we'd better succeed, because if those fleets reach Earth, the Council will order us to use everything we have. In the depths of the Sentinel, Vexna placed a hand on a communication panel when no one was looking. A tiny device transferred from his palm to the ship's systems. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence, not from distress this time, but in a pattern that would have been recognized by those who served the Black Flame. Sometimes, the best agents were those who didn't know they were agents at all. The Sentinel moved through space at maximum speed, racing against time. Lieutenant Howard's team had traced the Void Herald communications to a hidden base in an asteroid field on the edge of known space. They now had proof of the conspiracy, evidence that Herald agents had engineered the attacks and manipulated both empires. But something was wrong. The ship's communication system kept failing when they tried to send the evidence to Earth or the approaching fleets. Someone has sabotaged our systems, Garcia said, examining the communication array. Captain Winters looked up from her console. We need to check everyone who had access. Miller ordered a security sweep. It didn't take long to discover the small device Vexna had planted. When confronted, the Concordat diplomat's skin turned pale blue. I don't remember placing that device, he whispered, clearly confused. But I have. Gaps in my memory from my time on the Concordat homeworld. Kelvin examined the alien carefully. Mind control implants. The Heralds must have compromised him without his knowledge. Miller made a quick decision. Restrain him, but gently. He's a victim, not our enemy. With Vexna secured, they removed the blocking device. Communications were restored, but they received troubling news. The fleets had accelerated. They would reach Earth within hours. We need to get to the Herald base now, Miller ordered. It's our only chance to end this. The Sentinel arrived at the asteroid field to find a massive structure built into the largest rock. Ancient symbols covered its surface, the same black flame they had seen before. They're powering up some kind of energy weapon, the tactical officer reported. Miller understood immediately. They're going to attack one of the fleets and make it look like the other side did it. The war would start instantly. We need to stop them, Garcia said, but carefully. That base likely contains quantum technology. If our weapons hit it directly. The cascade effect. Miller finished. Tactical. Target their external weapons only. Minimal power. The Sentinel opened fire, destroying the Herald base's outer defenses. But before they could disable the main weapon, 3 ships emerged from hiding. Advanced vessels that combined Concordat and Draxian designs. Herald warships, Kelvin said grimly. They'd been building their own fleet. The Herald ships attacked, forcing the Sentinel into evasive maneuvers. Their weapons were powerful, striking the battleship's shields with tremendous force. Shields at 60%. The tactical officer called out. We can't take much more of this. Miller faced an impossible choice. Use the quantum weapons at low power and risk being overrun, or use them at full strength and risk tearing reality itself. Then Captain Winters spoke up. "Sir, I have an idea. The Heralds want us to fire at full power. What if we fake it?" Garcia caught on immediately. "We could modify the weapon's signature to look like maximum output, but actually disperse most of the energy harmlessly." "Will it fool them?" Miller asked. "They'll see what they expect to see," Garcia said. "It might buy us time to target their main base precisely." Miller gave the order. The Sentinel's main quantum cannon powered up, glowing with blue-white energy. The Herald ships moved closer, as if eager to witness the destruction. When the weapon fired, it looked spectacular, a massive surge of energy that struck one of the Herald ships. The vessel exploded in a shower of light, but there was no cascade effect, no tear in space-time. The other Herald ships hesitated, confused by the lack of the reality-breaking effect they expected. That moment of hesitation was all the Sentinel needed. Conventional weapons targeted and destroyed the remaining ships with surgical precision. With the path clear, Miller ordered a team to board the Herald base. Led by Howard and Garcia, they fought their way to the central chamber. There they found ancient technology connected to modern quantum devices, a terrible fusion of old and new designed to amplify the destructive power of any quantum weapon fired nearby. Garcia worked quickly to disable it while Howard secured the data cores containing evidence of the Herald's manipulation. Just as the last system was shutting down, the base trembled. A hidden failsafe had activated. The entire asteroid was set to explode. "Everyone back to the ship," Miller ordered over the comm. "We have 2 minutes." The team raced back to the shuttle. As they lifted off, the asteroid began breaking apart behind them. They barely made it back to the Sentinel before the entire field erupted in a massive explosion. But they had the evidence. When the human, Concordat, and Draxian fleets finally met near Earth's orbit, it wasn't in battle. Instead, representatives from all 3 civilizations gathered on the Sentinel to view the proof of how they had been manipulated for decades. Admiral Zekthar, seeing Vexena freed from Herald control, was the first to propose a formal alliance. The Draxian leadership, faced with undeniable evidence of infiltration, agreed. As for the human battleships that had caused so much fear, they would serve as guardians of the new peace, their terrible power held in reserve against threats that might still lurk in the darkness between stars. Sometimes, Commander Miller reflected as he watched the signing ceremony, the most dangerous weapons were the ones that never had to be fired at all.